Trying to make sure we have quorum. We weren't good. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm call to order. First up, do we have any? Folks, just go once you're seated. Can you just go around the table for roll call and just say your name and your jurisdiction? I'm going to start all the way down at my left. Actually, Wendy, can you start us off here? We're doing a roll call.
Okay. Wendy Jacobs, Durham County. Karen Howard, Chatham County.
Danny Howell, Town of Carrboro.
West McMahon, go Triangle.
Javier Caballero, City of Durham.
Eric Vitale, Technical Committee Chair.
Amy Fowler, Orange County.
Liz McCullough, Town of Chapel Hill.
We know that neither Commissioner Green or can join us today. Is there anyone else that I think Mayor Bell is also not here, so I think.
Is Matt, at least Matt is online?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment this morning?
No.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Next up, I have reports from staff.
Great. I'm not going to add much to the attachments. We've got our monthly report, a draft project agreement, which we would, the board asked for. So we got some great input from the City of Durham. And if any other jurisdictions or staff or folks would like to review and offer comments, I'm happy to take those still. And then there's a one-page April finance report regarding our different projects. So that's it.
Thank you. Yeah. It is okay. The only thing I wanted to, I'm not on there, which is fine. I just wanted to highlight yesterday when we were on our agenda prep call. I just wanted to highlight. We've been awarded. Thank you. Triangle Transit Agency's awarded more than $32 million in federal dollars. Go Triangle. Okay. Go Triangle. Sorry. Chapel Hill Transit, City of Durham. Between everyone, there was lots of different awards given, so I just really wanted to highlight that. It's something we should be celebrating. It's a lot of money, and in this, especially in this federal climate, I think it's a huge kind of shout out to the success of all the staff who made that possible. Thank you. That's all. Next up, we have a report from our TC
Chair, I think we have
A quick question.
Oh yeah.
Doug, you referenced a financial report.
Thank you,
There
Dave.
should be a one-page April.
It's not in our agenda. Did anyone else see it?
It's on there for now.
No.
Let me figure out what's going on with that.
Okay.
You might be looking at an earlier version of the agenda.
I did a refresh. Will that fix it?
Alright,
Still no.
okay, you're right. Well, I don't have any, it's the latest email that I had from Samad.
What are you saying? Email?
I don't know if anyone else has it. This is,
I'll send it back out and attach it, the report.
yeah, it's the latest email that I have.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Report from our TC chair.
I don't have anything to report on today.
Thank you. Next up, we have our NCDOT reports. First up, I have Lisa Mathis. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I've got a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. The first is NCDOT has earned 2 National Innovation Awards. We're very excited about this. The first one is an AI tool, and it's called, well, the acronym is FYLD. It's pronounced FIELD. It was introduced to several NCDOT employees in 2025. It's a safety tool. And it was a pilot program, and they did such a great job. So typically employees would review a job site with just their eyes and write down any hazards with a pen and paper. And now with an iPad, they take a picture or a short video and upload it to the app. And within seconds, the tool will list multiple hazards that the crews need to be aware of. And it's taking our programs to a new level. So we're very excited about that. Since the tool was implemented, there's been a huge spike in the number of employees now reporting power lines as a hazard. So I know that AI, is quite controversial, can make people quite nervous, but we're trying to embrace it to add, and it makes the job a little bit easier in terms of safety. So we're very excited about that award. The second award that we got was for the world's first super street interchange. It was in Division 9, and the Transportation and Mobility and Safety Division are taking home an award for this particular design and construction of the world's first. It's at Interstate 85 and 64 in Lexington. So it opened in the fall of 24. It serves as a key corridor, carrying about 13,000 vehicles a day. And it was selected for improvement due to sort of a long-standing pattern of crashes on this off-ramp. So they created this reduced conflict intersection, sort of eliminating a left, etc. It instead of, well, I won't go into that. I'll show you a picture of it at some point, but it delivered such safety benefits that were well beyond all of our expectations. The crash reduction rate, the anticipated crash reduction was 20%, and it was really down 40%. So we dropped it literally to 0. So we're very, very, very excited about that. So I'm very proud of the group. Wanted to make sure you all knew about our trash pickup. We've had a very successful, it's still continuing. I got out there with my vest and my crew, and we had a whole bunch of members from our sheriff's department and fire department join us. It was a nice partnership out there picking up trash. Nothing too exciting to report, which is a really good thing as well. I also wanted to make sure that you knew that what's today, the 21st. Tomorrow is the 22nd, and that is Work Zone Safety Wear Orange Day. So wear your orange, and together we will remind drivers to slow down, stay alert, and move over in work zones. So that continues to be a huge problem, and we're just trying to remind drivers we lose too many of our employees and our citizens on the sides of the road, so be careful. That concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Next up I have Division 5. Sure. Oh, go ahead, hon. Go ahead. Did you?
I had a question for Lisa.
Oh, Lisa, we have a question from Commissioner Jacobs.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your report and all the good news. I just had a question about the trash situation. I just was wondering, big picture, I know NCDOT has tried to have strategies and campaigns, but I know for this year, at least in Durham, I've just noticed like the trash is just horrific. Like every single major road, and especially on off ramps and on ramps, things like that. And it just seems like such a challenge and a Herculean effort to deal with it. And I just didn't know if there had been any conversations at a higher level about it.
This continues to be an enormous problem. What you're seeing, particularly right now that the weather has turned, is build up from the winter months, and we had a lot of terrible weather, so people weren't able to get out, and the contracting crews really and do some of that work, and then it just builds up. So we do have a buildup. We've also are heading into a season where, how do you say this? They let the grass grow a little bit longer for thicker grass in areas. So that also is an issue. We're what is the right way to put this? We are also under a situation where we're I'm not gonna talk about the bee situation right now. Anyway, we've got a lot of trash. It's much worse in certain areas, and we also have issues with contractors not having enough people. So we're working on it. I will get some more information. Hopefully you'll see a lot after this big sweep. This is why we do the sweep this time of year, because it gets so bad. It really is a problem, Wendy, of people with trucks that just throw a lot of trash in their trucks and let it disappear as they leave. So it's such a complicated issue. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer, but yes, it's bad. By the end of the year, we'll have picked up probably 22 million pounds of trash. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's a waste of money.
I hear you. Thank you. And I just a way in the future for all of the local governments to, everyone to participate in some campaign, because it just seems since the pandemic it's gotten too bad.
Well, and we can't, it's difficult to get volunteers to, we don't want to put them in dangerous areas. Like, so those have to be done by contractors that are, professionals. And you see it when you, like you said, when you're getting on and off interchanges, and those are tricky for people to get to pick it up. So that's why we even volunteers can't really help us in those specific areas.
Right.
So, but yes, you're exactly right. Like, any help that you all can give us as electeds, that's why I wanted you to don your yellow vests and get out there and take pictures and show people what you're doing and invite them to do it. And being proactive and inviting groups that are always looking for volunteer opportunities would be a really great thing to do as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for highlighting it.
Thank you. Division 5? Okay. Division 7?
Yep, we're here. Sorry, we're a few minutes late. We got stuck in traffic on the interstate. So I'm Brian Kettner, Division 7, Project Development Engineer. This is Matthew Whitley.
Morning, Deputy Division Engineer.
Chad is normally here representing us, but he had a conflict today, so we've graced you with our presence. But no, I think Chad sent the report out, and so I think we've talked about this in the past, that we've updated the format a little bit to kind of show projects in under development versus in construction. And so the dates and the project costs that are updated in red are the changes or the notes. And so if there's any specific questions, we're happy to answer those. A couple projects to just highlight would be the I-59-58, which is the pavement rehab on I-40 is underway. We're hoping to get that let towards the end of this year. Another big project coming up in the area is the I-3306 AC project, which is the interchange at I-40 and 86. And that's scheduled to let for construction of January of 2024. The other big project that we're working on developing is the U5845 project, which is the South Churton Street in Hillsborough. That's an ongoing project, and we should be having some more conversations with the town on that in the coming weeks. And then just an update on our construction project on the interstate, which is the interstate widening in I-40 in Orange County to the Durham County line. We're about 74% complete on that, reporting out. And then the division is also working with a contractor to look at adding the flyover bridge to the project as well to be constructed, so that whole corridor is completed of a 3-lane section on I-40. I did want to, is there any questions about project specifics that we could touch on?
What's a flyover bridge?
It's when you're coming up 40 and it flies over 85 and drops back in.
It's really just that transition bridge from 40 back to 85. Yes, ma'am.
That wasn't included in the original project, and so that's being added.
Thank you.
Yep. I did want to mention, and I think the MPO is on board with this as well, and I think the department is, putting a lot of emphasis on the confident scope, confident estimates. So we just wanted to reiterate, most of you are probably working with Alex Stankovich on our local administered projects. And so we just want to make sure that the emphasis is still there, that the LAP and the EB type projects are still moving forward and that we're making progress on those, because although we have some time for that confident scope, confident estimate milestone in September of 27, we want to make sure that, we're working towards some sort of deliverable so that those projects aren't subject to reprioritization in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Division 8.
Yeah, hey, good morning. This is Justin Richardson with Division 8. We don't have any updates at this time, but be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Division or Transportation Planning Division.
Oh, good morning. This is Julie. I just wanted to, I think I've shared a freight plan, the statewide freight plan updates before, and I just want to I'll send out to the MPO staff a freight plan fact sheet. Sorry, I'll send that along to y'all for your information. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Integrated Mobility Division. Anyone? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Next up I have our consent agenda. Did I get a motion for?
I'd like to move the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Councilmember Now and Commissioner Fowler. Yeah, and then all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Hold on, I just want to make sure. Okay, and then next up, item number 10 is memorandum of understanding. You guys, good morning.
Great, hope everyone's today. After a couple reviews and updated information from the board over the past 2 months, the technical committee convened a subcommittee to work through some of the issues with the MOU, and we highlighted 3. One was the number of representatives from each agency on both the technical committee and the board, and we resolved that with feedback from our partners. The second one was, what was the second one?
TUSC, Transit Operators Subcommittee.
The Transit Operators Committee Subcommittee, instead of that being equal to the technical committee, we made it a subcommittee of the TC and wrote it in to have, to begin with quarterly meetings or more as needed of only the transit operators. And lastly, the big discussion centered around the weighted voting breakdown. And we presented a few different options to the technical committee, and they recommended a method that it's called the Penrose method. It takes a square root of population to normalize the distribution and weighting. And the majority of the TC members present recommended the board consider that, but they did not make any recommendations for assigned weights. So you have that information in the MOU memo that was included in your packet this week. So we'd like the board to approve the draft MOU for presentation to our members and adoption. This is a reminder, 70 communities representing 75% of our population have to sign off on the MOU before it goes into effect. So that would be the next step, is I would be visiting all of the local legislative bodies and asking them to sign off and endorse the update that might be.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to say we like the Penrose method.
Okay. Second that thought. Yep. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I just want to share some concerns, when we, just from Durham County related to, the technical, having the subcommittee incorporated into the MOU, being that creating a new subcommittee is under the existing rules, and just concerned that Durham County, since we are responsible for the Durham Access funding and trips, I know there was concern Ellen had shared with us just about the operations committee not just being focused on operations, but more than that, and being that Durham County funds helps with the planning and funding, for us not to be involved, or just having the operations committee just focused on operations, there's concern about just some of that structure. I just wanted to share that. And I don't know if you have had any response to that.
I do not. The question was asked in front of the TC, and if I recall, there was not support to add Durham County as under the Orange County.
Okay, now I don't know if you want to elaborate any further on some of the issues.
Yeah, I think that, as Doug stated, I did raise this issue at the TC, and there was not support for adding Durham County. But from my perspective, right, we do have a responsibility and a kind of the lead agency for a lot of Durham Transit Plan activities, including the long-range plan and developing the annual work program, both things that affect funding and also influence the MTP. And those, in the responsibilities of the committee, it lists like NTP coordination, TIP coordination. So I feel like Durham County can contribute to those discussions if they are going to happen at that subcommittee.
Yeah, so that's really beyond just operations, and if it's going to be including those other activities, and obviously that we're involved with. So that would be, and that's definitely an issue for us. And I'm also, I guess, Ellen, because yesterday was my birthday and I did not attend our meeting, and I'm just reading off of notes, but I didn't know about anything related to the voting that's being proposed, or the way to vote, or the Penrose method.
And I may ask Eric to contribute to this as the TC chair.
You start, I'll chime in as needed.
It was a split vote at the TC, 7-5, with primarily the Durham City and County TC members voting against the Penrose method. If you compare to the status quo existing, it does change. It really changes the city of Durham's percentage significantly. Durham County's remains the same, so it doesn't really directly affect Durham County's vote. So I think it is a significant change, and as noted, 75% of the population has to vote to approve this MOU, and the city of Durham is 61%. Is that right? Something like that? 58%. So, I mean, I think there is a risk that the city of Durham wouldn't approve this.
I would agree. So I'm curious, I appreciate, let me just say, if we were merging with Campo, if that was the path, the Penrose system really sets us up, because it means that the largest jurisdiction can't throw their weight around, but we're not anywhere near that destination. I think it's just beginning to have conversations. We had a very candid conversation on our TPO agenda call. Since dues were also not part of the MOU conversation, it seems putting this forward, I mean, at this point, it would be the city of Durham with a vast, if we went Penrose, with a vastly lower percentage of the vote, while our dues are still very, very high. In fact, overwhelmingly in comparison to the rest of the jurisdictions. So there was conversation of like, okay, well, what do we do? Do we just table this? It's really at the end of the day a board member decision because the TC is not going to take this back up. It's not their space. This is an elected conversation. So my recommendation is that we do not vote on this today and that we create some kind of smaller group that can also talk about dues and the MOU. I really appreciate the work that is being done on this. It's necessary. But in all, just being fully transparent, there is no world where I would go back to my board and say, vote on this. And they're going to ask me and Councilmember Riss what our opinions are. So I'm just sharing that with colleagues. We can keep discussing this. Obviously, City of Durham, y'all could vote the way you vote, but there will be consequences for how we do local matches down the road because we can't continue. I think all of us are in very tight budget cycles. And so I think the most prudent option is to not vote today, create a subcommittee. I can talk with Doug and Danny and figure out and maybe volunteer some other board members to really figure out what is the best path forward and really bring in that conversation on dues as well as voting percentages. So that's my recommendation as your chair. You can take it or leave it. Oh, yeah, and I guess that's right. Do we want to tease out just this one, the voting percentages, and then pass the other two recommendations, which I think that there was agreement on, I think, mostly. So colleagues, I need some guidance on how y'all want to proceed.
So approving the transit operator subcommittee and approving what else?
Board member changes and the other administrative changes that they made to the MOU, like changing the name of the DCHC to TWTPO.
Yeah, so leaving that in there, so adopting that, but not taking up the voting percentages today until we have further discussion.
And you're wanting voter percentage to reflect dues?
Dues, yeah. I mean, that's certainly how it's done in Campo. We looked at that yesterday. The city of Raleigh doesn't overwhelmingly pay the dues for the whole camp, even though they are, the biggest jurisdiction in Campo.
So do they have a lower voting percentage?
Yeah, and I think the city of Durham is fine with having a lower voting percentage as long as it's then
reflected
in the dues.
They're like 33 or something like that, 31 or something.
And then
lower.
The amount of planning that we do and or allocate, is that proportional to population?
The amount of planning, I think we plan regularly full time and we try to support all of our members. I think what I've heard more of concern is that the city of Durham has an overall 65% funding cap. So right now they pay approximately 58% of the member match and have the voting, and their cap is 65% of the funds awarded. So I think that all three actually go into the discussion because I've heard them brought up.
And so a 65% cap, what do you mean by that?
That's the most that, of our total funding that the city of Durham can have assigned at any one time.
Which is greater than their percent population, which seems more than fair to them.
That's just the cap in the federal funding policy.
Yeah.
Did you? Go ahead.
Well, I would say that we would prefer that I like your suggestion of a subcommittee of members of the board to work out all the issues. Because again, we have an issue with the transit subcommittee on operations. So
would you be comfortable with the other pieces of it? If those are, because there's other administrative pieces that we don't want to not clean up.
Well, the ones that are just straight, there's some that are just required that are the ones that are just required. I think the extra things that we're adding, I guess I would need clarity. What are the things that we're proposing to move forward?
It's the subcommittee, the voting percentages, and then the, what was the third one, Eric?
Board member changes.
Board member
And then there's
changes.
a bunch of admin.
Can you share more on the board member?
It's just changing around the number of like TC members and, board members if desired. It doesn't really do much to affect the weighted vote. It's just how many representatives, are voting members. Like for instance, the city of Durham had 5 before for TC, and now we're going to go to 4, TC members. Like just making changes to those numbers.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have any effect on the weights or anything other than, representation.
I would need to ask Ellen.
Sorry. Commissioner
Yeah.
Jacobs, also, you're not the voting member today, so it's Commissioner.
We're
Sorry, I'm just being real candid here.
We're in agreement though. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
I think that our concerns about it are, I think this board is very congenial and cooperative and collaborative. I worry a bit that when we make an MOU, it carries forward to boards that we can't predict who's going to be on them and how they behave. And so I always have to look at how good does it institutionalizationally protect the minorities going forward in less predictable board compositions, and with a mind towards the best possibilities for regional planning and the relationships between the members in the long term.
Sure.
So maybe those are things that do need further discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, to, put an exclamation point on that, basically if, it helps make our input valuable, because otherwise why are we here? If we have zero, Durham can just run everything themselves, we would seem sort of pointless
I
for
don't
us to
think
be
anyone
here.
wants that. What we're saying is that then everybody's dues change to base that structure, because at this point what you're asking is the largest jurisdiction to subsidize your dues and then not have that outsized influence, which I think is just an unfair position. I understand your community is smaller in population, but that's not the city of Durham can't control population growth.
But the planning is still, the amount of planning and funding is still seemingly, according to what I asked Doug and he answered, seems proportional to your dues. And so if our goal is for us to be working together as a region, that's, I think, why most of the minority groups are thinking that.
Be happy to go talk to Campo and see how their planning and their work goes, but I don't think that changes. The TPO staff is available to all of us. Go ahead.
Could I think, as a representative from one of our smallest jurisdictions, I think there are several tensions and histories here at work. Historically, we have relied on a pretty collegial understanding with the city of Durham. That has been to Carborough's great benefit in this regional structure. And I think as we are talking about all of the possible changes within the MOU and our governance, especially as it relates to Campo, I think the minority interest is going to be less well protected by a consideration of a merger with Campo. I don't know that that's in the entire book on that structure. I think we have to recognize a negotiating moment here for those of us in smaller jurisdictions related to the funding. Probably, I think we should probably consider the vote weight and the funding that Durham is raising. I think pretty carefully. I think on balance, if Durham is motivated to merge with Campo directly, as they are, we probably need to make this governance structure more habitable for Durham at the bottom line. I think that it is a very reasonable and proportional point about the weighted voting versus funding. Personally, I probably prefer the priority of the weighted vote for the minority interest on this board and a reduction in Durham's funding to any combination of the other possible things on the table.
So you're liking Penrose and comparing that with the amount of funding?
I am not, yes, I think Penrose and Durham reducing their contribution is probably on balance the healthiest way forward for the minority members of this board. I could be swayed on a couple different things about this. I think what we are seeing is, to be frank, a little bit of a fraying of the understanding of the way we have approached the urban core, the majority members, and the minority jurisdictions like Carrboro. I think Durham is feeling like their position is less tenable than it has been in this relationship. And so, I think we just need to think very frankly about these trade-offs. And I think, as I've heard from most of you, the comparison of our governance with Campo is desirable. Emulating their efficiency, that's great. I think it's good to look at other organizations. I think I hear real reservations around the board, some of which I think are well-founded, about the idea of a long-term permanent merger with Campo. So considering these balancing trade-offs, I think a subcommittee is a really good idea. And I'm sort of speaking at great length to synopsize, I think those of us in the minority just need to think very frankly about our prioritization of the vote weight and the funding. And I suspect that we might find that the vote weight, considering the percentage that we would then have to increase ourselves in our funding to offset what Durham is not contributing, would probably result in total better representation for our interests.
And if I can add some more, I think that as we discuss it, it becomes clear that it's much more complicated and that a more intense discussion would be really helpful. I would want to point out as one of the considerations that population alone isn't necessarily the best metric, in that, for example, we've got tens of thousands of people every day commuting from Durham County into Chapel Hill, and that creates traffic for us, but we don't count those populations as part of our weight. And so issues like that, this regionalization, and how do we take into account this regionalization as well as population, as well as all these other considerations in that discussion. And so I agree, I don't think we should vote on that part today because obviously it does need more discussion.
Okay, so it seems like most folks, from what I'm hearing from what people are saying, is standing up a subcommittee on the percentage of vote is something that folks think we should do. I'm not clear on the operator piece subcommittee. I know Durham County has some big reservations. Do we put that in or out, I guess, is the question I have for the board right now. Seems like we need to pass some part of the MOU and leave some parts out.
It is really the board's discretion. You don't have to approve any part of it today.
Is there any risk of not approving the more straightforward pieces?
No.
Okay, so do folks feel comfortable? Go ahead, Commissioner Long.
Could that be part of the subcommittee discussions as well?
The operator piece, yeah. I think it's an MOU.
There's a comment on.
Oh yeah, go ahead, thank you. Mark. Okay.
Maribel?
Good morning, can you?
Good morning. I'm sorry I can't be with you this morning. My alternate is also not there, so we're not going to be able to vote on this, but I just wanted to voice my support for the concept of taking time to create a subcommittee and dive deeper into this. And I need to get, obviously, feedback from my own staff and other board members as well, because we're discussing some pretty substantive changes. So I'd appreciate the opportunity to explore it more.
Go ahead.
And how are we determining who serves on that subcommittee? And
I think what I had suggested is that myself, vice chair now, and and Doug figure that out as far as do we have, and then just ask folks if they can serve with the mindset of like ensuring that there's some obviously representation from Orange County, but smaller jurisdictions. And then kind of going from there. That's if folks are comfortable with that. Yeah, okay.
Yes, as long as there is somewhere in Orange County.
Yeah, I don't know who, is it gonna be Mayor Bell, is it gonna be, I don't know, but we were gonna just figure that out after today. I don't think we wanna keep going on this agenda item and trying to figure out which entities, but it makes sense that, I mean, if Karen's willing, I feel like it should be folks from Durham, folks from Chatham, folks from Orange. I mean, it seems like that's probably the fairest approach. Yeah. All right, so we are not voting on this today.
If I could just real quick, it's okay. These are very things to update. And NPOs and large regional organizations all over the country, when they get to this point to updating these things, they take a lot of conversation and a lot of work. I feel like everyone involved should be proud that we've gotten to this point and optimistic that we are going to work on these issues. So thank you very much.
And I just want to be clear, because I know we're all in budget season and our energy and attention is elsewhere, and then many of us are on break. So I'm not anticipating this probably coming back to us until, until the fall, probably, based on just that timeline. So I don't want folks to think, oh, this is going to come back before us, whatever, in June or whatever.
That's fine.
I, at the risk of being banal, with our summer break being invoked, I do think that this is like a real moment to check in about the values part of this assignment. I would, I hope that we reach out to each other individually outside of these subcommittees. I would like us all to please be in contact, text one another, page one another. This is a moment, we've had some turnover, as we've noted, as making administrative decisions, where the historical vision for regional planning and the relationship of how we, address some of what Councilmember McCullough is raising versus the position that has changed a little bit that Mayor Pro Tem Caballero is raising. These are, we can't rely on history here. We have a vision of a regional coordination that I think needs to sort of be reaffirmed in the way that we do this particularly. So please, all of you, you'll hear from me, but please get in touch with each other about this through the summer. Just like I say, sort of a stupid point, but this I think is pretty existential to the way we approach the way that we coordinate, in addition to sort of, the other things that we're legislating here more technically, which often does go pretty congenially. I just think that this is a moment to kind of revisit, some of the values that frankly this board has kind of inherited and might want to reinvigorate.
And on that note, just for whoever is on the subcommittee, that part of that will be making sure you do that outreach to each jurisdiction, whether or not they're on the subcommittee, and making sure that those folks have talked to their staff. As we heard, Hillsborough had not really had that opportunity, so that's going to be part of the homework. It's not just going to be, hey, have a conversation. It's really making sure that when we are here to vote, folks feel really comfortable that they've gotten their staff's expertise, that they've gotten their questions answered, and they feel ready to make that decision. Go ahead, Commissioner Fowler, and then I'm going to keep this going.
Yeah, just one final question. The funding caps that you mentioned, is that part of this MOU, or is that part of some other thing that designates it?
Regional funding policy.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Next up, we have item 11, capital projects funding recommendations.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tony Sopton, and I'll be speaking about our capital projects. So in this call, we present funds for fiscal years 27 and 28. So in this presentation, first we'll go over the schedule of the call as well as programming that follows. I'll begin into a bit of the background for our policy as well as just what we actually work with. Then I'll get into projects that were submitted in this call, and then what was recommended and next steps. So into the schedule, So at the beginning of this year, we opened up our call for member agencies to submit applications to your staff. And throughout the month of February and March, staff support them. And we brought back a recommendation to TC in April. Right now, we are just looking to recommend recent needs of public comment. They'll be released throughout the month of May and come back in June, ultimately for approval by this board. Following the approval from this board is when we start programming into the STIP. In the month of June, there'll also be an accelerated TIP amendment. We'll have recommendations, so we can send it over to NCDOT. Come August, it should be approved by the AC Board of Education and will be included in the STIP. This is a key step because until projects are in the STIP, municipal agreements cannot begin and also collecting of funds cannot be initiated. So that's a key step for that. Getting to the background of our federal funding policy, or I should call it regional flexible funding, or RFF. The RFF program just sets up the data-driven program just for us to analyze and evaluate our projects score. This past couple months, we did make some updates to our policy. Updates include incorporating guidelines to utilizing our fund swaps. For those who aren't aware of what those are, each year, ACDOT completes what's called ownership distribution. This is where they look at our funding for the year and look at what we didn't spend, and then they find a way to spend it. And then in turn, they give us kind of IOU for the amount they use for us. In addition to this, it further defines the project agreement that our sponsors have for the TPO, just saying they will complete projects on time and will fund matches as necessary. And additionally, the TDM program will now also complete the funding. So basics on how the RFF program works. So it seeks to program out all federal funds on the left, block grant directed retrieval, nutrition alternatives program, industrial mitigation air quality, and also incorporating our fund policy. So new projects are scored on using certain criteria, key points. Existing projects are scored separately, just because we do want to prioritize those to be completed first. And just noting that in addition to the scoring, jurisdictions that have not received any federal funding in the past 4 years also receive bonus points. Unfortunately, in this case, none apply. Getting to how much money we had to program here. So this year to shows the kind of standard amounts that we'll have in any given year to program these. The amounts that here also show the fund swaps that we have. These can be applied towards any year. And so we work within each funding program. There's those restrictions between those. We program these funds. And ultimately, this is for this recommendation, how things played out at the moment. As far as changes, it goes towards jurisdictions and the categories that touch our end. So we see majority went to City of Durham. This is up from the 39% that it received last fall. And then as far as the improvement types, majority is broadband improvements, and then followed by transit infrastructure projects, and also just noting that we received more requests for executable infrastructure than before the past. Getting to what was requested, so 7 agencies submitted a total of 19 projects and programs. The total amount of federal funding requested is the most applications, was just short of 100 million and 5.3 million to program. So with that, we were able to recommend funding onto 14 projects and programs. 8 of those were already existing in the STIP, whereas 6 were new projects, and then 5 did not recommend at this time. Getting to what was recommended, here are the projects just in order of the agency. So the 2 here in the City of Durham for vehicle transit order and for bus purchases. Jupiter Pine Regional Council was awarded funds for the TPO program. ACDOT requested a bit more funds. It's for the criminal application. Council also requested a bit more funds for the South Depot Street project and Chapel House Street projects for Third Avenue, Essex Drive, and Milton Creek Freeway. There is one change to note here, not on this, I'll skip it a little bit. For the new projects, the electric charging station that City Road has, they, since we're happy that they need to accelerate that schedule, and so they will not need those funds anymore. And so the full amount, $3.8 million, will be shifted on to the Gateway Transit Corridor to make that project whole, since it was initially only partially funded.
Oh, go ahead. Under the new projects, the DOT project for Cheek Junction intersection improvements, we have some concerns that that is not even eligible under this kind of funding. And that's a lot of money that could be used elsewhere if it doesn't really fit here.
Yeah, so the reason we said just due to the improvements that have for your project head for the future, it does quick path for the right way, right along the railroad intersection. Coordination has always been difficult with railroads, and so for them to kind of initiate this and set that up for future, it only makes things easier for us in the future. Additionally, we use this opportunity to leverage our funds to take for a project that might not exist otherwise. So also on the project, we are not the only ones contributing funding. DOT using these spot safety funds to make a local match. Additionally, 2 developers are also contributing funding to go towards the project. And ultimately, if this money does not go through, then the project will also not go through.
But it's a highway related project, and highways are supposed to be in another pot. Most DOT money goes to highways. Why isn't this in there?
As for why they were not able to allocate that money, I can't sure on their part, but we saw the benefit of it.
All right, so both roads are collectors, and they're both on the high injury network. And that's why NCDOT is using their spot safety funding. So, yes, it would be ideal fully construct head improvements as part of the project. But right now we haven't identified a funding source for that extra component. But it will include right-of-way and future possibilities for extending pedestrian and non-motorized facilities across the intersection.
Yeah, not ideal, but. Anyone else have any questions before? Okay, thank you.
Right here from your project. So there's that one. Durham County partial funding for the paratransit bus operations training facility. Also not using our federal funds, but using the fund loss since the project's only eligible for state funding. Additionally, Orange County has 2 projects to install vehicle infrastructure, one at the transit operations center and the second at the Forceplex. And Chapel Hill has a couple of bus purchases. As far as the next steps, we are just waiting for public comment right now before it will be brought back to approval in June.
And about that one project, why don't we check with Division 5 in the city and see if we can't just organize like a short virtual meeting to go through the project and talk about it. I think that might help everyone understand this project a little bit more because it's uniquely complicated in the area.
Any questions? No? So our action today is just to release for public comment. I hold on. This came up obviously for us. I just want to make sure. So I guess the amount of funding, there's like a difference between what folks were initially told the funding was, and then they applied, but then the total money is like bigger, right? It's 35.
We did over program in this round.
Okay.
And so,
can you talk a little bit more about, you know, why maybe, what I guess the philosophical decision around that was the over programming piece?
Yeah, so the main reason is just mainly to keep projects in the pipeline because projects being delayed is a very common occurrence, unfortunately. And so when too many projects get delayed to next year, we don't really have to spend money on the current year. And so we use program more than we have to build funds for it, just kind of always have a project within that, that line.
Okay, but like when the city submitted for projects, we probably were we aware of that kind of approach?
So that's one that we've done in the past as well, but the caps that are set on funding policy are based off the availability, not the whole program balance.
Okay, so I think just moving forward, making that clear for us, because I know we're facing some funding gaps, and I know that we would have maybe done a different approach had that been clearer for us. Okay. Go ahead.
And just a clarification, so you're saying that originally there was like 400,000 for Sportsplex, and now that's not part of it? The EV?
No,
That's second.
Moved there, so one moment. So there are 3 projects for electrical infrastructure. The city of Durham moved theirs from the ballot, but each of Orange County are annual.
So that Orange County EV charging station is still part of it? I thought I heard you say they were getting rid of that.
Orange County ones are remained unchanged.
So that is still there?
Yes.
That's weird. I thought I heard you say you were, okay, taking that out and putting it towards the Durham. Okay. Okay, all right.
Any other questions? So I think our action is just to release those for public comment.
So moved.
Have a motion from Commissioner Fowler and a second from Commissioner Long. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much. Next item I have is our environmental justice report methodology. Good morning.
I'm calling you, planning manager, for the record. I'm filling in for Samad Ranginwala today because he is representing us at the Association of MPOs Tools and Training Symposium in Lexington, Kentucky. He is really the mastermind behind this environmental justice report update. I cannot take credit for this work, but I am going to present it today. So as we shared during our previous presentations to this body, we've created an ArcGIS story map that accompanies the report. The story map is intended to be an interactive, public-facing companion to the environmental justice report, and it's going to remain live on the TPO website. This is a QR code to take you right to the story map if you'd like to look at it. When the board adopts this plan, we'll also be releasing a full data package that members can use. So this resource includes the data analysis that we performed as part of this report, along with our full scoring methodology. So members of Triangle West can use that for their own demographic and transportation analysis. I'm going to touch on the methodology for the report because we did update this a little from the previous time that we shared this with you all. And we made some improvements during that public comment period to really improve our environmental justice analysis. So as a reminder, there are several demographic groups included in the analysis: people aged 65 and older, people who identify as having low income, households without a vehicle, people who identify as Black, people who identify as Hispanic, people who identify as a minority, people with limited English proficiency, and people with disabilities. Each block group received a score based on the percentage of people in the block group for each category. And those scores were all added up to create the Transportation Disadvantage Index, or TDI is the acronym I'm going to be using. Because income is such an important indicator of disadvantage for transportation, we doubled the score for income in locations where we have a USDOT designated area of persistent poverty. So that is something that is included in this methodology. It's also really important to note that TDI is not measuring disadvantage directly. It's measuring demographic factors that could indicate mobility needs. And this distinction matters because of how we talk about these communities. We're really identifying where needs may be concentrated, but we're not labeling communities as disadvantaged. All right, so the updates that were made, we did update our disability metric during our quality control and data review. We identified that there was a systemic issue in the disability data. Some non-disabled populations were being included. So this corrected data produced some really small shifts in where TDI is. There were just kind of like a quartile on the margin, but there was nothing hugely dramatic. We also removed veteran scores from the index. While many veterans have distinct transportation needs, we actually found that those were covered by the other categories in the index. And this did not significantly change the analysis, removing the veteran scores. We also added a new performance measure for jobs that are accessible within a 15-minute walk. What we had analyzed previously was a 30-minute walking commute, which is not really reasonable. It's longer than most people would walk to work. So we're finding this 15-minute measure is a bit more practical for bicycle pedestrian planning. We also have added a low-income housing tax credit mapping as an indicator of affordable housing, which you'll see on a later slide, that can help us provide some more detail about where affordable units currently exist and how those overlap with our TDI communities. And then we've updated the methodology for converting census blocker data to our traffic analysis zones, which is something that's part of our model.
Question.
Yes.
Sorry. So this environmental justice report, is this something that's required from a federal standpoint? We're just doing it, okay.
It's
So
something that we've had in the past, and we're updating the methodology.
Okay, so you have leeway to change these definitions and how you weight things, got it. Okay,
yes, exactly. And so the indicators of disadvantage, these 8 here, are ones that NCDOT is also using, that some of them, we had added a few just to see how they might affect that, but we realized, veterans, they were covered by it.
Could overlap with disability or income, yeah.
So this map shows transportation disadvantage by traffic analysis zone. This is the geography that's used by our Triangle Regional Model, the TAZs. The darker purple indicates higher concentrations of people in those TPI categories I mentioned on the previous slide, which are the indicators of transportation disadvantage. The zones that are in the top 25% of our overall index are outlined in black on this map, and those are what I'm going to call the high TDI zones. This map is largely consistent with the prior versions you've seen. After the disability data correction, removal of veteran score, there was a little movement away from central downtown Durham to outer Durham, and then there were a few zones added near the South Point area, interestingly enough. But those changes really were marginal from the previous version. Okay, let's talk about performance measures. As far as performance measures go, we used the Destination 2055 newly adopted MTP project, and we modeled to evaluate access for the updated high TDI zones. The key takeaway here is that high TDI zones consistently have better walking and transit scores than the TPO overall. And this is because they tend to be in more urban locations. So I'm not going to go through the chart, but you can see here that walking access score improved between 2020 and 2055. It's rated good in both years.
Is that based on the plans that we have in the meantime, or just with population growth, the percentages would change? How are you getting the 2055
The 2055 is coming from the MTP model, which includes the projects that we're planning to implement.
That's my question, yeah. Okay, got it. Perfect, thank you.
Walking access has improved from poor to fair, and the high TDI zones have go from good to excellent transit access during that time, which is actually quite better than TPO performance as a whole. I mentioned the low-income housing tax properties in the TPO. There are 80 that exist in our region. 50 of them are in high TDI zones. Got a total of 4,189 units and 4,036 affordable units. And this matters for future updates. We're going to continue to track this data because if low-income housing tax properties remain in the same locations, TDI regions zones shift over the years, that would be a strong indicator of displacement, showing people who are likely needing and benefiting from better than average transit and walking access are being pushed out to other parts of the community. So we're going to continue to track that. Yes.
I think this is great that you have included affordable housing projects. I wonder how we're going to factor, I know the city of Durham is starting to implement how we track them, but considering that most of them have 30-year limits on their affordability, and especially when we're looking at, projecting out, 25 years, unless we have some mechanism where we're trying to keep them affordable after that 30-year time period, that's going to change. They're not going to stay 80. So I just want to throw that out there. That's a whole other dimension to that.
This was the best indicator we have for housing affordability right now.
Yeah.
Available data.
But it just highlights how important it is that we do track them and that everybody's figuring out, because it's going to be cheaper for us to actually have a way to buy those properties than to build new affordable housing.
Yeah. And there's certainly loopholes they can get out at 15 years, even LIHTC folks. So yes. Are other jurisdictions, other MPOs doing this sorts of things?
They are, but I would say our approach is unique. And as far as the amount of things we're considering as part of environmental justice in our MPO, one of the MPOs that I personally look to for best practices on this kind of thing is Delaware Valley, the Philadelphia area. They've been doing this for many years, and they've actually updated their methodology over time as well. We kind of modeled ours after theirs.
Great. Well, I appreciate the work, and it seems very valuable. Yeah.
All right. Just a couple more slides, I promise. So I'm going to talk a little bit about jobs and employment. The key takeaway from the analysis here is that job access via walking and transit is growing and improving significantly between 2020 and 2055. And high TDI zones, again, are consistently outperforming the TPO average as on a whole, but those gains are not as equally distributed amongst all the high TDI zones. Positive growth is concentrated in those downtown zones, and many of the zones that are a little further outside of town, are kind of our more rural areas, are not showing a lot of additional jobs access via transit and walking, as you might imagine. Especially in the more rural parts of the county where transit access is going to be more limited in the future. I do want to point out another thing we added, because now we have our adopted safety action plan, we overlaid this with our high injury network and our high injury intersection network to see how safe the transportation network is in these high TDI zones, especially since we're going to see a lot more people walking and biking, more vulnerable users of transportation in those areas. And we found that 12% of our high injury network falls within high TDI zones, which is not super concerning, but 35% of our high injury network intersections are actually in these high TDI zones. And this is concerning because, as I mentioned earlier, the high TDI zones are 25% of our index. And the 35% figure is disproportionate. So there are more high injury intersections in these areas. So this is something we really need to keep in mind and be aware of as we're planning projects for the future. And that is all I have today. I'm happy to entertain any more questions if you have them. And the motion we're requesting today is for the board to adopt the environmental justice report.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Fowler.
No questions.
Oh, okay.
I would just move to adopt the plan.
Okay,
I appreciate the work very much.
Motion, and I need a second. Second. Who did this? Oh,
Karen.
Karen. So a motion from Commissioner Fowler and a second from Commissioner Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Our next item is, we're done with our action items. Under informational items, I have Triangle Transportation Choices FY25 Annual Impact Report. Good morning.
I'm Jonathan, Senior Program Analyst for Clinical Science. And I'm talking about giving an update on the Triangle Transportation Choices Program, which, for those of you who don't know, is our region's transportation demand management TPO program. So it provides funding to different organizations and initiatives across the region that essentially try to encourage residents and workers to try different alternative transportation modes. And they do this through different marketing campaigns, digital outreach, in-person events, and through direct engagement with residents and workers. So the total funding awarded for the program in fiscal year 25 was $2.1 million. Triangle West's portion of that was about $600,000, and there were 20 total grant recipients across the region, including 7 different community-based and nonprofit organizations. And the other 2 members of the program are NCDOT's Integrated Mobility Division and also the capital area TPO. This slide shows all the logos of the different programs within the Triangle West region that are funded for different types of initiatives. Since I don't have time to go through all of them, I do encourage you to click on the report that's on your agenda, because our report has a full page for each of these organizations where they describe the different type of work they did throughout the year. And just an overview, so in all of FY25, there were 479 different events all across the region, so they're direct in-person engagement events. And of those, there were over 24,000 people who were directly engaged in exploring alternative transportation modes and provided them information and resources to be able to do so. And so then we take all that information and calculate the total program-wide impacts, which is a pretty robust methodology, and there's a full methodology document linked off our website if you'd like to get into that too. But essentially, we take all the data that we collect for participation in different programs and services throughout the year, and then we funnel that down into an estimate of the number of people who started or increased their use of alternative modes, and then even further to those who did so because they were directly influenced or assisted by initiatives from the TPO program. And the way to funnel that essentially is by factors that were derived from our employee and student commute surveys, which we do each year, one or the other, so every 2 years. And I'll talk a little more about that. But then we get to so, in summary, in FY25, the program contributed to 5 million vehicle trips being avoided, 3 million gallons gas saved, and 74 million commute miles reduced. There were over 25,000 alternative transportation users reported, and this also resulted in 54 million pounds of carbon dioxide released prevented. Right side of the infographic here just kind of puts that all into perspective. It's hard to do with numbers that big, but for 74 million commute miles reduced, that's roughly 25,000 trips from San Francisco to the city. And here's a bar graph showing the past 10 years of the program impact. We have been meeting and exceeding the goal, the target PMP reduction for the program, which is 25% of the estimated annual growth in regional PMP. So it's helping to keep that number down, at least a little bit. And yeah, so it's been fairly consistent. Some of the up and down variation is due to updates in the methodology every time we have a new survey. And clearly some impacts during COVID because of personnel resources. When we take it one step further with a new methodology that we team from Lauren Diggins, a consultant who's nationally known for coming up with different calculations for TEM, which is great. They essentially calculate dollar amount saved from the program as it pertains to different benefits to society. So things like health benefits, reduction in traffic congestion, air pollution emission reductions, and so forth. And so this year, the total savings from the program is estimated at about 30 million, and remember the cost of the program was about 2.1 million total, so that works out to about a 14:1 benefit cost ratio. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that we did our fall student travel survey in 2025. We had NC State University, UNC Chapel Hill, Wake Tech, and North Carolina Central University participate. We had almost 3,000 total responses to a fairly lengthy, robust survey. So it's great. We had a lot of different insights that we grabbed from this, but the one that I wanted to mention to this group was really just that there were 38% of the students surveyed said that they tried or increased use in alternative modes throughout the year. And among them, 66% said that one of the TDM programs, one or more of the TDM programs and services provided by their school influenced their choice. So things like the Go Pass program provided different information and events from their TDM program. And finally, just wanted to give an update on FY26. So the total program budget this fiscal year is 1.7 million. TPO is providing about 622,000. The number of grantees within Triangle West region are traditional grantees, so Chapel Hill, Town of Chapel Hill, that sort of thing is 7. And then for the community-based nonprofit, we had 5 within the Triangle West region. And so as of the end of the second quarter, about 40% of the funds requested have been invoiced and paid out. Yeah. A couple of the many different things that went on throughout the year.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? No. Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much. I love when we get like happy things and not have to make hard decisions.
Yeah,
It's refreshing.
I just would like to say I love the slide that translates everything into money. It'd be good to know, like, how did we translate like noise pollution reduction into monetary benefits? So if there's a little one pager that describes,
yeah,
here you are, describes that, that would be great, because I would love to take that to our legislative folks and say, you know, this is money. This isn't, gosh, isn't it nice that we, you know, whatever. This is money.
Yeah, Melissa.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I can send you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And then next up we have our Triangle Bikeway update.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Miller. I'm a transportation planner with Triangle West. We are joined by Kara Russell from Capital Area MPO and Chris Lawson from Central Pines Regional Council. And we'll be providing an update on the Regional Triangle Bikeway projects. The action for this item is to receive the presentation and provide feedback. So here is our agenda for this item. We'll start with a background and overview of the Triangle Bikeway project for those who may be unfamiliar. Carol will then share updates for Campo's Triangle Bikeway East design project. I'll share a few updates for Triangle West, and Chris will do the same for Central Pines. Then we'll open up the floor for discussion and questions. So first, I'm going to turn it over to Carol to get us started on the overview and background.
Thank you, David, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Carol Russell, and thank you so much for having me here today. I'm always happy to come over to the western side of the triangle, and so I'm just going to give you a little bit of the history of the project, just to make sure we're all on the same page. There's a lot of activity that's been going on, and we'll continue the next couple months, so I'm sure everybody has the same information and kind of up to speed on what activities had occurred and then what will be occurring as we move forward. All right, so what is the Triangle Bikeway? We'll start there. Basically, we are looking at a multi-modal project, right? We're looking at a bicycle and pedestrian commuter pathway that connects all the way in total from Chapel Hill to Raleigh. So that is looking to total about 23 miles, which is a rather large project for a bike and pedestrian piece of infrastructure. And so the concept of the Triangle Bikeway has been around in various stages of planning for about 2 decades. The most recent of those planning study efforts was actually the feasibility and implementation study that was undertaken by both TPO, basically DCHE, DCHE, and Campo worked together to look at this whole swath of area and look at what are the best pathways to connect our different communities across the region. So up on the screen, you'll notice this was kind of the analysis and that was done in that planning process. And it did result in a kind of pared down for further alignment across the board. So I'll be talking a little bit today about the eastern portion and how we kind of split it and why. But this was the final routing that was adopted in 2022 by both Campo and TWG boards. All of that information, it's a pretty detailed report, lives on trianglebikeway.com. That is now hosted via Central Pines Breakthrough, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it has a wealth of information about some of the engagement that was done, more information on the analysis, and some conceptual planning, and kind of breakdown of each of these different colors that comes up on the screen. What it also did was come up with a design typical that is shared regionally. So that is looking at where possible to do a 16-foot separated path, and that would include 10-foot for bidirectional bike, and then 6 foot off to the side for the pedestrian accommodation. Again, it is envisioned to be that commuter corridor, but also just provide that accommodation for pedestrian activity. It also provides some typicals where there might be right-of-way constraints, places where you might be making more of those connections to existing local facilities. So that might look like areas like RTP where there's an existing system, or some of the systems that we have and are blessed with in the region. So now I get to kind of give you all a big round of applause because you've been busy. We have been seeing over the years, and are excited to see over the years, a lot of our greenway and bike and pedestrian infrastructure has been building out little by little. And wanted to take the time to really zoom out and look at that all together as a region. So I'm going to try to highlight our map of spaghetti. I do apologize. I realize it looks like spaghetti. So on the right-hand side, the green and the purple lines are all showing the bike-only facilities and the shared use path that also provide for mobility for bicycle and pedestrians. And I'm going to put out a few that we all know and love. So on our furthest side west is the American Tobacco Trail. There's a large accommodation there, high quality, high capacity corridor that we have in the region. And then on the far east,
the Moose River Trail, which goes way up into the lake area down to the so that's another large north-south connector. And then we also have our localities building out these systems that are starting to connect east and west. But this project, the Triangle Bikeway, which this is show. No, my laser pointer does not work. That's okay. Goes about from this point here to make that connection into Chapel Hill, connects to the American Tobacco Trail, pulls through the RTP in Morrisville, and then comes down this way into the Art Museum in Raleigh. So when we think about this in totality, it's really providing the ability for no shift for commuters that are taking that commute path. You know that I-40 is one of our largest community corridors in the region, and so to have a facility that's continuing to add to that commute path is always a good thing for No Choice, but it also connects a lot to our existing infrastructure that's starting to build out and create those opportunities to really travel beyond just that I-40 corridor. I will start to highlight east, just because I'm focused on the eastern side. Connecting to a lot of the exciting developments that are happening and continuing to plan out into the future, like the Triangle Mobility Hub on the eastern side, a lot of our transit investments that are coming online in the future. Again, it does kind of connect to those major regional destinations, such as RTP, the Art Museum, the airport, Lake Crabtree, Umstead. I could make a equally exciting and compelling slide for the western side as well. But when we started to think about how to take a first bite of the apple, that'll come into play. So again, as I mentioned, the project in total has been around for about a 2-decade time frame, but we are starting that first step into the design phase. And so this includes really preparing the project for construction and future funding opportunities. So how did this come about? It is a little bit different. After the 2022 endorsement from the boards, there was then some conversation about how to take that first bite of the apple. And as I mentioned before, this is a pretty large project. And so Wake County and Research Triangle Foundation partnered together to fund that design phase up to 90% design. But in that, there was a lot of interjurisdictional coordination still. It has covered a lot of territory. So they had asked for Campo to manage that design process and coordination. But we also do have a strong partnership with NCDOT for the review and oversight. And then we have jurisdictional coordination along the way as we're working through this design to make sure we're thinking about how best to connect to communities and make sure we're taking into consideration that we're working together as a whole. And so when we started to think about how to split it up, the solid blue line on the map is what we're calling Triangle Bikeway East, just so it's clear what section we're talking about. So this comprises about 14 miles. It does have a western terminus of TW Alexander here in RTP, and then it does terminate over near the Art Museum connection of a bridge over the 440. And so when we did make this split, we also considered independent utility. So as I mentioned right now, we're working with local funds to fund the design, but we anticipate that there might be federal funds applied to the project in the future. And so when thinking about that, we wanted to make sure that we're splitting the project in a place that makes sense for commuters, right? The path from RTP to Raleigh is just as compelling as it is from RTP to the eventual terminus of Chapel Hill. So again, these two can run parallel. They can run at different times. One could be completed and then the other can start. It gives us the flexibility for timing as well as the ability to start working through the more specifics on how to implement, how to maintain, things of that nature. All right, so again, Triangle Bikeway East is just a designator to be specific about the section of the Triangle Bikeway that we are moving into the design phase. And being clear that the goal of the design at this time is to get the preliminary design and position the project for future construction from the opportunities. To the next slide. So just as an update of what has been done so far, since the adoption in 2022, there's already been a lot of movement on the ground and development coming online. We looked at it and put investments in the region. And there also was some areas from the implementation and feasibility study that were left as options to work out in future phases of design, which are the three green dots there on the smaller map on the screen. So we kicked off in 2024 with our site visits, to take a look at things that we're building out, look at how that was interacting, see if any assumptions need to be changed as we move forward. And so activity, we started some preliminary surveying activity, and then did an alternatives analysis that happened last fall, and then engaged in coming up with some further alternatives. So you'll notice on the screens, there were some alternatives looked at in the RTP area to figure out the best routing through RTP to make sure we're not missing connections, as well as finding the most efficient path through, as well as through the Lake Crabtree area and the Wade Avenue area. And so we did go out and engage with the public from the month period of January to February to ask folks where they wanted to go and where they wanted to go in the future, how they might use the Triangle Bikeway, and that helped inform how best to make a decision about some of these alternative routing areas. So that is still all under analysis, right? We've got all the really good feedback to sit through and sort through. So excited to bring that back at a future time. And then from there, we're looking to bring all that back together for the final results of the technical analysis and the engagement analysis to move forward an endorsement of the one final line through that area. So all this information is up on our website. We're using publicinput.com/TriBikeEast specifically for the eastern half. You could also still access that at trianglebikeway.com. If you scroll down, there's a link to still get to this side. We did have about 630 survey responses that were complete. And then 70 at some of our public events. As well as, we provided information kind of handouts, flyers, project cards, which I brought today on the back corner. If you're interested, if you've got folks that have questions about the status of the project, all that information is there for the taking. And so in terms of, what was done, the engagement, and some of that analysis, there will be an informational presentation of those summary results to the Campo board on May 20th. So all are welcome to listen in. It is an informational item. That the board doesn't meet in May, but we are open to just hearing that information. But also I will be back again in June, specifically here to talk about that final endorsement routing, kind of walk through that together then. But I think that is about all I have on the question. So I'll turn it over to David.
All right, so I'm starting with a few updates for the bikeway on the west side. There are about 13.5 bikeway in our area, essentially from the Wade County border through City of Durham and RTP, eventually making its way into Chapel Hill, as Kara mentioned, largely running alongside either NC 54 or I-40. And as Kara mentioned, about 4 miles of the bikeway interconnecting area are part of Campo's Triangle Bikeway East design project. And so thanks to Campo and their partners, they are funding this section of bikeway from the Wade County border to RTP. It sounds like to 90%. So we definitely thank Campo and Campo's partners for that. All right, so I'm starting with a few updates. So Toronto West submitted a 1 mile segment of the bikeway into the Spot P8 process. This is a 1 mile segment along I-40 between NC 54 and NC 55. We do not have scores for biped projects yet, so we don't know how it competed against other biped projects, but I understand that we should have scores by June. The NC 54 Corridor Improvement Project, also known as U5774, also recently restarted after being paused in 2019. And this project is important for the Triangle Bikeway because it was identified in the feasibility and implementation study as a potential way to further design and construct a bikeway that aligns with that project. And U5774 is essentially this portion of NC 54 that runs between Durham and Chapel Hill. So as I mentioned, this project just restarted at the beginning of the year. There have been, I believe, 2 meetings thus far with Toronto West, NCDOT, our Durham partners, and others. And so we'll continue to be engaged as that project moves forward to see if the bikeway can be incorporated into that project. Toronto West is also a key member of the Bikeways Regional Advisory Committee, which Chris will touch on here in a moment. We're also a partner on Campo's design project. And then finally, the Toronto Bikeway has been incorporated into the recently adopted 2055 MTP. And in the MTP, it states that development of the Toronto Bikeway is a goal for our region. All right, so looking ahead to potential next steps. So these next steps on this slide come from the action plan portion of the 2022 feasibility and implementation study. And it is essentially getting to where Campo is now. And so moving towards 30% design and beyond, and then also developing those funding and construction strategies. But in the meantime, we'll continue to partner with Campo on their design projects, learn about their processes, and potentially incorporate those into our own when our members direct us to move forward into the next phase. All right, so I'm going to pass it to Chris to share a few updates for Central Pines before we open it up for questions.
Hey guys, I'm Chris Lawson with Central Pines. Our role is essentially as facilitators. So we administer the Regional Activity Committee, which is a quarterly meeting of local advocates and staff from around the region. We maintain a website, as David and Kara mentioned. Basically, we get a lot of questions from the public, most of which are, when is this starting? We're really excited. And then random other complaints just about traffic and stuff. And then the last thing is we have a nonprofit for Central Pines. We might use that for helping fund the bikeway in the future. Really no more updates on that as far as like how it would work and function. But this is Central Pines' kind of role in the bikeway.
All right, so again, the action for this item is to receive the presentation and provide feedback. As Kara mentioned, we will be bringing this item back in June, where Campo will be seeking an endorsement of, I understand, 30% designs of the bikeway that align with their project. And again, 4 miles of that runs through City of Durham and RTP. So with that, we're happy to take any questions you have.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Thank you so much for this update. I think this project really demonstrates actual regional collaboration, you know, at its best, and the fact that Campo is paying for development of part of this trail in RTP and the City of Durham. And I have a few questions. So if you take out the 4 miles of it that our Campo is going to be responsible for, that really only leaves 9.5 miles left to complete within Durham and Orange counties. And what is the overall miles of the whole trail?
23.
23. So that's,
In my answer, just because of the alternatives.
yeah.
So a definite
Okay. Right. So the good news is that about, you know, 2/3 or so will be done, and for us to complete only about 1/3. I'm wondering, do we know, since RTP is using their transit, they've enacted a transportation tax within the special tax district. Do you know, have there been conversations about them also, the portion that is still gonna remain in RTP, whether they would also be open to partnering on funding that portion for the next phase. Have there been any conversations?
So the design, the portion east, pretty much covers all the way to RTP and movement.
Okay,
So that does include that, tribal center.
okay,
That actually goes right along the
okay,
facility. So RTP does partner with Wake Kennedy, to put up those funds for the design. So
okay, so it covers everything that is in RTP. Okay, okay. And then with the spot 8 submittal, can Campo put points on our projects? For instance, could they put points when we put this in spot 8 for funding for, would be able to support that in that way? I'm just
I
asking.
mean, other reviews can apply points. I think that window has passed, right, for spot B8, or is it not? Not yet. I guess it's not.
We're doing that in the next.
Really nice person.
Yeah.
Okay, have there been any conversation with them about them supporting this part of the Triangle Bikeway?
Yes, and we will continue to coordinate with them as we get into the local to the point design. And we have a lot of overlapping projects, including this one.
Okay. And then related to the U5774, NCDOT supportive of trying to incorporate the Triangle Bikeway in that road project, those road improvements.
Yeah, so since this project has just restarted, I think we're trying to get everybody in the room and just have a discussion and see kind of where things go. Now, this project aligns with a lot of other projects and various plans. So I think that we're just trying to take a broad view of everything that should be or could be incorporated. I personally haven't been in those meetings yet, so I can't speak to NCDOT. I know some of it is in Division 5, some of it is in Division 7, but
we're still at a very conceptual level with that NCDOT project, but we did submit a letter during the start of study that happened this fall that included this project amongst a lot of other projects we have going on.
Does anyone from NCDOT have any comments at this point, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we can comment on the Division 5, but from the Division 7's perspective, we want to support as many projects as we can, just with the understanding that a lot of these type projects come out of the division needs bucket, which is a smaller bucket. They're also competing with other projects that, have capacity and other, project, needs. And so I think that's the balance of trying to support the bike and ped type projects, but also with the understanding that a 16-foot, typical section, off the right, with so many feet off the roadway is going to be, so in certain areas are going to be expensive. And so I think we've been working with Chapel Hill and some of the other municipalities in our division to kind of right size those projects a little bit and try to work together with the MPOs and do some funding matching and try to be collaborative. So yes, we want to support as much as we can, but with that division needs bucket being so small, we kind of have to spread the wealth, so to speak.
So I think I was involved in this study years ago, and I just think it's important to remember that this is a really viable way for people to commute and also do other things, but that, the goal is to use the right of way that's already there to build the trail. And with electric bikes, it's not that many miles that we're talking about. It's nothing on an e-bike. And that, building a trail like this is much less expensive than building another lane of highway. And so I think we have to really use that mindset when we're thinking about the cost because it really will be a very cost-effective way to get get people off the road. So I hope that I'm excited that we're moving forward and collaborate, all these ways to collaborate to move this forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes, I'm very excited about this. For the part in Chapel Hill, it looks like it's going along 54, and I do know there's currently a bike path along Meadow. Is it connecting into that, or is it?
Yeah, essentially, I mean, you could consider part of that part of the bikeway. The typical section, it's conceptual, the bikeway is 16 feet, and I know the existing path is not quite there yet, but it's essentially the same.
So they would just improve that, but keep that section. Great, thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to throw in a personal anecdote along Wendy's line, because I live in downtown Chapel Hill, work in the RTP, 11 miles, totally doable with a regular bike. I tried it once. I felt like I was taking my life in my own hands, and I only did it once. And if a woman, 10 years younger than I am now could do that, then the capacity for people wanting to do that and being able to do that is really significant. And I want to just emphasize that, because I hear too many people say, nobody's going to do that. And that is bullshit.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you all so much. We will see you again in June, apparently. The last bit is just informational items, and then I just want to remind folks that our next formal meeting is in June, on June 16th. We will be meeting in May. That is the time we've set up to evaluate our ED, but that can be on Zoom since it's not a board meeting. So if TPO staff could just change the invitation to reflect that it will be a Zoom and not here. So that is what we decided last year. Danny and I will be reaching out to y'all to figure out exactly how that's going to look. But I just didn't want folks to get real excited and start taking a meeting off their calendar because that will be our closed session for personnel. So that is not obviously a meeting that's open to the public. It's just for board members and staff can help us with getting a Zoom link out to folks. Does anyone else have anything? If not, I'm going to adjourn this. Okay, we are adjourned. Thanks, y'all.
Madeline is going to be.
Drop off at 8:30, but
Try to grab it.
Next Friday, just because I.
Yeah.